And I'd like to open the May 14th, 2020 school committee meeting. This meeting is being held virtually through Zoom. The town of Littleton began conducting remote participation / Zoom meetings pursuant to Governor Baker's emergency order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law on March 19th, 2020. Since that time, unanticipated legal concerns relating to the open meeting law have been brought to our attention by the town clerk. These concerns were supported by the Attorney General's office and confirmed by town council. One concern is that the chat function allows a parallel text conversation to a board's public meeting. Chat is essentially running commentary that is occurring, but it is not moderated or followed by the chair. All participants and listeners may not be aware of comments being made because of some meeting participants join by phone and do not see these conversations. Another concern is conversations between residents within the chat room which are not incorporated into the public record. In response to these concerns, the town will implement the following changes, which in no way prohibit any member of the public from participating in discussion and sharing information during a public meeting, and will ensure that all listeners and participants have equal access to this meeting. People that join the Zoom meeting are set so their microphones are muted. If you called in by phone, please use *6 to mute or unmute your phone. So that the meeting can occur in an orderly fashion, we ask the people who join keep their microphones on mute so background noises do not interfere with the meeting. If you wish to participate in the meeting, please use the raise your hand function available on Zoom, or if you called in by phone, dial *9, which will activate the raise your hand function. The meeting host will notify the chair of the raised hands, and the chair will determine whether and when to allow public comment. When called upon, participants should unmute, then state their name and address. After speaking, we request the participant return their microphone back to mute. All right, with all those ground rules in place, we'll start the meeting. We will start with the consent agenda, the minutes from April 23rd, 2020 and April 30th, 2020, and oath to bills and payroll.
Darrell Baker, I make a motion to accept the consent agenda as read.
Second, Jen Wilson.
That motion is made and seconded. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all votes via Zoom are roll call votes. I'll call on each of you individually. Please state your name and how you vote. Darrell Baker.
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt Hunt.
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen Wilson.
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. We have two sections in the meeting for input from interested citizens, one now and one closer to the end of the meeting. If there are any interested citizens, please use the raise your hand function, and our facilitator, Dorothy Malone, will get you called up and ready to speak. Dorothy, do we see anybody that's raising their hand? No?
No.
Okay, then we'll move on to the next agenda item. We have an open appointment on the Finance Committee. We actually have, it's currently open to finish out the term, which only has a few days left. But then that seat was going to be open for another 3-year appointment at the end of this current fiscal year. So we are going to go ahead and consider the only candidate that applied for it, who is Tyler Gray. And we will take two motions, assuming that we reach consensus, one to fill the interim seat for the remainder of the appointment for the existing time, and then a second amendment to appoint him to the succeeding 3-year term. Tyler is with us on the meeting. Tyler, thank you for giving us your intention to serve on the Finance Committee. We know you've been there before, but if you don't mind introducing yourself to the public and any members of the school committee who aren't familiar with you, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair, for giving me the time as well. Yeah, so my name's Tyler Gray. I've been a resident of town since 2001, and as Mike mentioned, I've kind of had a variety of experience throughout the town in the past. I served on the FinCom from 2008 to about 2011, and I gave up that seat when I ran and was elected for school committee. Served on that for about a year and a half, and then I had to leave due to a job change. But during that time, I gave Mike a break from the budget subcommittee, and tough year as we were going through some challenges with finances and union negotiation. I've also served as a commissioner of trust funds for the town, 2 different terms there from 2019 to 2012, and then again currently serving in that elected capacity since May of 2018. Outside that, professionally, I'm actually a director of pre-sales engineering. Been an IT director for a long time before that, and I'm responsible for about $150 million book of business for professional services and product sales for a publicly traded VAR team across New England. So, looking forward to hopefully being able to get back to the town and extend the capacity again. I really enjoyed my time on FinCom. Found it really fulfilling, and honestly missed doing it.
All right, thank you. I appreciate it. At this point, I would ask if any of the school committee members have any comments or questions for Tyler.
I don't have any.
Okay. Nope. Looks like Tyler. Looks like you win the lottery. There was one ticket bought and one ticket drawn, and you had it. No, we appreciate it. We appreciate you stepping up. You quickly cited your experience, but you've been an active member participating in our local governance, and it's great to have you back. You were quite well regarded in your various roles, and we're happy to have you getting back in a little deeper into the pond along with the rest of us. At this point, I will entertain the first motion to fill out the remainder of the interim position.
This is Daryl. Make a motion to appoint Tyler Gray to fill the interim seat for the Finance Committee.
Second.
A motion made and seconded. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I will call for the roll call vote. Daryl?
Daryl Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. So that motion carries. We'll now entertain a motion for the next 3-year term.
This is Daryl. I make a motion to appoint Tyler Gray for the 3-year Finance Committee appointment.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Daryl Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, Kyler, congratulations. You're in like Flynn. Gary Wilson is the current chair. We will notify him of your appointment, and then you can get with those guys. And a lot going on as we debate town meeting and think about various contingency planning, given all the circumstances and uncertainty of what we're dealing with the budget and going forward. But we're going to get you going right away. So thank you for that.
Sounds good.
We'll have to get sworn in by the town clerk also.
Yeah.
Oh, correct. Yes. But Tyler knows that. He's been around this track more than once. But yes, get with Diane Crory, please, and get in there. All right?
Thanks, I will.
All right. Moving on. The next item on the agenda is the superintendent's evaluation. Daryl Baker has been very good about doing this the last several years, and unfortunately, it looks like this might be the last year for Daryl at this particular task. But we're going to give him his going out with the last one here. And Daryl, why don't you lead out on that? Thank you.
Great. I wanted to make sure that we had completed Kelly's evaluation prior to the election and turnover in the board there. So I just in terms of process for our audience listening here, the process is to evaluate the superintendent in public. Each member provides a written assessment. One of the members, myself, this year compiles it into a composite evaluation. The composite evaluation is the one that's becomes the official evaluation of the superintendent. He gets the honor of having it the only official in any town to have it done in public versus a private conversation typically done with employees here. Process-wise, I'm going to have each of the members give a summary assessment. We don't need to go line by line throughout the whole evaluation in terms of hitting the highlights of the evaluation process and results there. And I think in terms of streamlining things this year, we took the guidance that was provided by DESE to account for the significant change in focus that occurred because of the COVID-19 pieces there. And we relaxed some of the requirements to provide exhaustive documentation across many of the different pieces there and focus the documentation on the COVID-19 response, since that hit across many of the standards for the evaluation there. With that, I'll just open with my my summary evaluation of Kelly. I rated him exemplary in all of the categories. I felt his leadership has been exceptional, not only during this time of the last couple months, but as I looked about the year in terms of the continued process and education improvements that we keep introducing into the Littleton education system. His leadership has been exemplary across the board there. As I look at the events from the COVID-19 response there, I find the communications that he's been sending out on a regular basis to both the school committee and the town, the parents there, to keep them informed of the changes that are occurring within the program and the other pieces there. The rollout of the remote learning pieces there, I think, has been well received and well welcomed by the community, and provides an opportunity for our students to continue their education in this difficult time for presenting material. So, like I said, in my summary evaluation, I rated Kelly exemplary.
All right, thank you. Matt, do you want to go ahead and chime in?
Yeah, I would just say the same thing. I think, this is unprecedented year, and I think Kelly's done a great job handling it. I feel very informed what's going on in Middleton schools from the emails I've seen, and I think, prior to March, working with Kelly, I think he does an excellent job, and I would agree that he's exemplary.
All right, Jen?
Thank you, Kelly. I want to say this year has been really great. It's been a very difficult year, and I think all the work that's had to go into all the communications and everything that's happened in the past, what are we, 2-3 months in now, is extraordinary. So I really want to thank you for everything that's been done. As we get into the other categories, I'll go into more details about.
Yeah, so my plan wasn't necessarily to go category by category.
No. Okay.
Here. I will say that when I compiled the summary, I think in the one aspect of communication, there was not 100% consensus within the inputs that I compiled. And I think that's probably one of the areas you're referring to, Jen. If you
so I'm probably the only one then. So I rated. Let me get onto that page then. That is 3C. Right, so for communication and engaging in regular two-way culturally proficient communication with families, I gave a proficient because this is a very difficult time for a lot of families. I think all the information included in the communications coming from the superintendent have been very, very informative. The only reason I suggested proficient as an area to improve on is that I've heard from so many families that are dealing with trauma and other things, and not that the communications are insensitive, but there's just so much going on that communications with fact after fact just are not, I suggested a warmer and compassionate tone. Not that you're not a warm and compassionate person, but I would like to know that, things are going to be okay. And, maybe we don't all need to do exactly everything in preschool and kindergarten, first grade, or some of the younger grades. And that it's okay to just pay attention to family and focus on that kind of stuff. So that's the main reason. But like I said, I appreciate everything you've done, and I think it's been great. So thank you.
all I'll say is it's tough going last because I just don't want to repeat everything you guys said. But what I will say that as the chair, I spend more time with the superintendent than most of the other members do. And over the past several years, based on Superintendent Clenchey's, professionalism and demeanor, dealing with, minor, what I would call minor crises, whether it's, budget problems or issues that arise in a particular school or a particular situation with a family. I've always assumed that because of his calm demeanor and his professionalism, that if there was a real crisis, that we'd be in pretty good shape. And I had hoped I would never really know for sure. That would just be an assumption, but now actually we're finding out. I think that all you said it, our ability to, through his leadership, our district's ability and our staff's willingness to get behind a collective effort to deal with this has been tremendous. The response has been measured and balanced. It hasn't been, chaotic. It feels like we've always had a handle on what's going on, even as crazy as it is. So I appreciate that. I will say that prior to the outbreak, I think it was just another typical year for Dr. Clenchey. I think Daryl said it best. We always see a steady drive for improvement, an evaluation based on data of where we can reallocate resources and pay more attention to help the district move forward. I think we've let out in a lot of ways in terms of our adoption of technology through our classrooms, which is now obviously paying off in significant measure, given the circumstances that we're in, but also the focus that we've had on social and emotional learning, trying to continue that given the distance that we have is extremely difficult. But prior to this happening, it was clear that we were moving forward in that direction, always with an eye towards getting better. So I'm always confident that every year we're going to be appraised of new efforts and updated on continuing efforts of programs that have been put in place to get an evaluation of how they're doing. And I've never been disappointed in that regard. So my evaluation was exemplary as well across the board. It's been another good year and as good as it could be given the circumstance. There are myriad challenges facing us moving forward from a budget perspective. And Dr. Clenchey forwarded an article from an interview with the Director of Education at the state level talking about what some of the things we might be facing getting back in September. And I'm confident that with Dr. Clenchey there, we're going to do as well as we can possibly do, given the hand that we're going to be dealt. The only question is, how bad is that hand going to be? So Dr. Clenchey, at this point, I'd like to ask you if you have any comments or thoughts on the what you read or what you've heard this evening.
First of all, excuse me, thank you very much for the feedback. It's always nice to have feedback as a leader. As a leader for my 21st year as a superintendent, there's always opportunities to grow. And in this job, there are so many different things that you're involved in. There are so many different scenarios. I was, looking back at my career as we started our new adventure into remote learning as a result of COVID-19, and some of the things that I've done in my career. I've been responsible for redistricting within districts, a reorganization of districts, and which are all very emotional, and building of new schools, closing of schools, etc. And you draw from all those experiences when you run into a new challenge. And part of being a leader is to pull everybody together. Use a collaborative process and a thoughtful process, and make sure that we come up with a plan that works. We have a huge responsibility educating all the children in Littleton, and we have the responsibility to ensure that we continue to educate children. But in this case, as important and at times more important, we need to make sure that our students and families are fine and safe. The strain on families during this time has been incredible. Very proud of our families and our students, and every family has different things to deal with. Littleton in general, when we look at what's happening in our surrounding towns, et cetera, we, knock on wood, have, I feel, handled the COVID-19 precautions very, very well. I was just talking to Chairman Fontanella today, and the transmission rates in Littleton within the general public have been fairly contained, and we hope that it continues that way, which means a lot of things, that the town or community is taking the precautions seriously and doing whatever they can to ensure that we keep our community as safe as possible. Up till 2 days ago, I was really looking forward to some sense of normalcy in September, and I wasn't convinced that there wouldn't be some change and it wouldn't be identical, but after having meetings for the past 2 days, there is greater uncertainty. We won't know a lot for the next 2 or 3 weeks. A lot can happen 2 or 3 weeks. During this whole remote learning adventure, we really were working on time frames of 2 to 3 weeks, and we entered phase 5 of our remote learning plan, and each phase is a little more refined and involves more learning, more deeper learning, more new learning. And I really want to give credit to the leadership team and our teachers and our entire staff within our district, including the school committee. For a superintendent to be able to come up with a transformational change, and by that, transformational change usually takes years to complete, and we virtually reinvented education in a matter of weeks, and that wouldn't have been possible without the dedication of everybody involved in education in Littleton, as well as the parents and the community at large. We kind of redefined what partnership means in education now that we're doing remote learning, and I've always said anytime we have a challenge, there's always something that we will gain from it. There are lots of things that we wish we didn't go through, but we always learn from these experiences. And at the end of this journey, when things get back to normal, I'm convinced that we will come back to the table, and we will have new tools in our toolbox, so to speak, to continue to move education forward. So again, thank you very much for the feedback, and thank you for your support, not only during the year, but throughout these uncharted waters. Greatly appreciate it.
All right, thank you. In my conversation with Dr. Clenchey earlier today, he did present a proposed addendum to the superintendent's contract. That is something that we will need to review in executive session and discuss. We will schedule that. Won't be tonight. We'll schedule it as a separate meeting. We haven't done an executive session via Zoom yet, so I just gotta go through the rules and regulations before I'm comfortable convening one, but I'll get that done. Daryl, do we need to make a motion to accept the evaluation?
Yeah, there's one item that we need to sort of come to closure on for consensus. Like I said, there was consensus on almost on all of the individual scoring attributes and the overall rating of exemplary, with the one area of the communication. So I'd like to just get the sense of the committee as to whether we want to rate the item 3C, communications, proficient or exemplary there. And
so we had 3 of us rating it exemplary and 1 of us rating it proficient.
I also did proficient.
Oh, you did proficient. Okay.
Do you normally
All right.
points in round, or how do you normally calculate, Daryl? Or is it a secret?
No, I look for where we have clear consensus there. So, and in this case, it was mixed. I mean, I am comfortable with rating it either way here. I think, I think making sure I think the overall assessment of the committee is Kelly's performance is exemplary. If we rated this one area proficient, I don't see that detracting from the overall rating that we have assigned there. And I
agree with that. I don't think it's going to make a material difference to the overall evaluation. And given that, I have no problem going and letting it be kept at proficient.
And as a courtesy, I'd just like to ask Kelly if he's comfortable with how the committee is finalizing the overall assessment.
That's fine. Not an issue. Communication is something that we continue to work at, and there's always areas to reflect on. So I'm definitely fine with that.
So process-wise, I will just check that box there, and I think we could take a motion to accept the evaluation as we agreed upon. And I'll make that motion. Usually I don't make my own motions, but I'll make it this time.
I'm still thinking.
All right, Daryl's made a motion. Sorry. Matt, did you second that?
I'll second that emotion.
Thank you. All right, any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, thank you. All right, we're done with that. We will move into subcommittee reports. Daryl, the PMBC committee?
Yes, we've been meeting on a regular basis. A lot of the effort has been focused on what's happening with the library and police station there. The one item that is related to the schools, which we had talked before about the youth softball, is it softball or baseball, putting up lights down at the Shaker Lane ball field. We're proceeding with getting some information on that, but realistically, their fundraising has probably is stalled at this point. It's unlikely that project will execute this year for it.
Okay, I'm sure they'll get back to us when they feel more confident that they're ready to move forward, so that's fine.
The PMBC is staying engaged with them in terms of helping refine the plan and getting some refined costing information. They haven't technically told us no, that they're going to need to delay it, but realistically, I don't see that happening there. So I don't think, I don't think we have to have that at the front of our plate to worry about executing by late summer.
Okay. All right. All right, thank you. The budget subcommittee, no updates on the budget other than what we voted a couple of weeks ago. The only thing that we need to be thinking about was Kelly and I did have a conversation with Nina Nazarian, the town administrator, about the potential ramifications if town meeting is moved beyond June 30th. And there is a lot of debate and concern going on about how and if we can do town meeting prior to that. If we are not, as a town, able to have a town meeting and vote a budget for FY21 prior to June 30th, that means we would start fiscal year 21 without that budget in place. There are things we can do to move forward. It basically means you have to vote a budget month by month, and you can only spend the amount that's been approved. It's very much not an ideal situation. We are posted for Monday night with the board at the Board of Selectmen meeting, May 18th, as they discuss this in more detail. I appreciate Nina Nazarian reaching out to us because there are implications for the town side budget, but certainly implications for our budget as well if we have to do something different than getting a voted budget from town meeting prior to the start of the fiscal year. So she asked if we wanted to be at that meeting. I said yes, and I felt it would be prudent to post for it. If we don't end up having to participate as a group or take any motions or votes, that's fine. No harm, no foul. But if we do, we now have the ability to do that if we think it's necessary. And there's really nothing more to say to that until the selectmen make some more firm determinations about what they think is the best way for the town to move forward. So anybody that's interested in getting more detail on that, Monday's meeting will be important. But I don't know that it'll necessarily be the final word on it. But that's all we really got going now, is just trying to see if we can get that budget that we all agreed upon, both ourselves at our public budget hearing, and then what we agreed with in practice with the FinCom and the Board of Selectmen, especially regarding the scenarios related to the budget impact of the COVID-19 crisis. So still a moving target. Nothing's going to be settled, even if we are able to have town meeting. It's really going to be the just moving forward for the moment until we get more definitive information. But not moving forward without that budget voted is going to make it even more difficult to deal with. But obviously, we're trying to. I know the Board of Selectmen and the moderator are, worried about balancing the operational concerns and issues and priorities with public health and public safety. So it's a tough call right now, but they're working it, and we'll just have to stay tuned.
Hey, Mike, I see other towns preparing they call it a 1/12 budget.
Yeah.
For the piece there. Given that our budget comes from both appropriated and use of some of our revolving funds, there may be additional technicalities that we will have to be taking into account during that process?
So the way I currently understand it, and we've only just talked about it late yesterday, so there's more research to do and more confirmation of what some of our assumptions are. But I'm pretty sure that the 1/12 budget is related to the appropriated budget, and that our revolving funds would be available to us beyond that 1/12 budget. So we do have some flexibility potentially in that regard. Having said that, if it comes to it, I think that we all very much need to meet and talk about it before before the administration goes ahead with that. Nothing terrible is going to happen if we get past town meeting without or past June 30th without a voted budget. We will function, we will move forward, and it's just going to be difficult. It's going to require some decision making, and it's also going to require conceivably or very realistically a significant amount of effort by our finance team, both on the schools department side and the town department side, both in executing in the immediate moments as the fiscal year starts, but also catching up based on if we do decide to spend some money out of revolving funds in anticipation of receiving the appropriated budget, then accounting for that money back into the revolving funds, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's not going to be easy. If it's necessary, we'll do it, but we shouldn't kid ourselves. It will be arduous. It will be less than ideal. And in some ways, it could very well be negatively impactful on the way we operate the budget. Doesn't mean we can't survive it. It just means it's going to be less than ideal. And, keeping that in mind, I think is necessary as we weigh what's the right decision to make. I think we'll have, if that's the road we end up going down, there'll be a lot more discussion and analysis and information before we make any real decisions about what's the best way to deal with that.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions or comments on that? All right. Hearing none, we'll move on to the policy subcommittee. Daryl?
It's Policy Thursday. Making a final run at things for as I wrap up my term here. I've gone through almost all of the policies. If you go to, I think it's page 14 in the packet, I have the spreadsheet that has a sort of a summary one line about what the various changes are. I think I pretty much have gone through everything except section B in terms of trying to bring policies up to date there. I think there's one B policy that had a change that we just put that one in there. So if you scroll through the spreadsheet, the ones highlighted in yellow should correspond to ones that have had changes that are sort of a one-line summary of the change relative to the policies there. The blue ones need a little bit more research, so those are queued up for the next board to deal with there, because they take a little bit of research with the superintendent and administration. I flagged the ones for rescind. There was several updates in the MASC language that we didn't necessarily adopt for it. And then there was also a couple of policies that are no longer MASC recommendations that we have left in our policy book, and those could be those would be necessarily maybe considered at a later date there. However, I think the one on busing, I talked to Kelly about that. He likes the fact that we have some of the details specified in policy, and that one we are leaving in independent of the MASC recommendation to pull that policy for it there. So I realize I dumped you, I think, about 100 policies in the packet tonight, so I sent them out early for you to have a chance to review them. If there's any specific questions people have, I can address them, and if not, the summary motions are in the agenda.
Given that we have 3 motions, I'd like to handle questions and comments one by one, and then once we get done with the first one, we've had our discussion, answered any questions, decided whether or not we want to entertain motions and do votes if that's required. We'll move to the second one. So let's start with the motion to accept the first reading to rescind the following policies. Are there any questions or comments on Daryl's recommendation to rescind? There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 policies. Okay, looks like we're good. Okay.
Matt, you have to speak because you're shaking your head doesn't necessarily convey to everybody.
That'd be Matt Hunt negative.
All right. It looks like there is no further discussion on those. Then I will entertain a motion.
I gotta go back to that. Hold on. Make a motion to accept the first reading to rescind the following policies. Do you want me to read them?
No, just say as listed.
As listed.
Okay.
Second.
All right. Motion is made at second. Is there any further discussion on the motion? Hearing none, I'll call for a roll call vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. Okay, now I would like to entertain any questions or discussion on the motion to accept for first reading the following modified policies. There's a fistful. It's not the biggest pile, but it's still a pretty good pile. Are there any questions or comments on the suggested modifications?
Matt Hunt, no.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, no.
Okay. I'm fine with them as well. Thank you, Daryl, for that. I will now entertain a motion on that block of policies.
Make a motion to accept the first reading of the following modified policies as listed.
Jen Wilson, second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none. Roll call vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. And lastly, we have the largest block, the motion to accept for first reading the following policies as current, so no modifications of these particular policies. Any questions or comments on those?
Matt Hunt, no.
Jen Wilson, no.
Okay. Given that, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to accept the first reading of the following policies as current as listed.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a vote. Daryl?
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt?
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen?
Jen Wilson, yes.
And Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. All right, Daryl, are you projecting that that's your end of your tenure in terms of bringing policies forward to the school committee?
Yes.
You said that with a little bit of relief.
I'm running out of meetings and to take a run at the last batch of them there. So what will happen is you'll get this same packet of policies in the next for the next meeting with the motions changed to for the second reading and finalization
Okay.
there. And sometime I'll either email or drop off to Dorothy a thumb drive with all of the modified policies updated in Word, and she can convert them to PDF format for the website.
All right, great. Appreciate the work. And when we finalize them, we'll give you a real clap on the back. Well, virtual clap on the back, I guess. All right. At this point, we are near the end of the meeting. This is our second opportunity for input from interested citizens. If there are any interested citizens that would like to speak with the school committee, please use the raise your hand function, which is *9 on your phone if you're dialed in by phone, but click on the raise your hand function if you're dialed in through your browser.
I don't
Dorothy,
have,
do we have any?
no
No?
raised hands. No.
Okay. All right. Is there any other business we need to discuss? Looks like not. Then I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Any discussion? Well, it's a motion to adjourn. Forget it. No discussion allowed. Darrell,
Darrell Baker, yes.
Matt,
Matt Hunt, yes.
Jen,
Jen Wilson, yes.
and Mike Fontanella votes yes as well. I'd like to thank Bettina and Dorothy for helping facilitate this meeting, and I would very much like to thank LCTV and Judy Reed for monitoring this and getting it live on LCTV. We appreciate all the efforts to help the community stay engaged and in touch with all the governance that's going on. We will, if you're interested, meet on Monday with the Board of Selectmen, and this meeting is now closed. Thank you.
Thank you.